Hey guys, I was just contacted by one of my former students, Oliver Anderson. Oliver played number 2 and 3 singles at Gonzaga. Excellent player, excellent athlete. Oliver is currently a 12.1 UTR and he's playing some futures events currently. For those of you that don't know, futures events are basically lower level professional events, so he's testing the waters with those. He contacted me saying, "Hey Nick, I'm stuck at 120 miles an hour. How do I get over this point? How do I get to 125 or potentially 130? He's 5'10", so he's already doing really well being at 120 already. But on the Pro Tour, any marginal gain you can make on serve speed or ground stroke speed goes a really long way. So we're here to see if he's still leaving some potential gains on the table, which I believe he is. So I have him here lined up side by side with compatriot Thomas Johansson. As I mentioned in previous videos, Thomas Johansson was 5'11" and could serve 140 miles per hour. He won the Australian Open several years ago, so obviously a very formidable player. So the first thing we're going to dive into is the very beginning of the motion. And as you can see here, both players have the hands together. Their racket and left hand are both positioned closer to the net than their left hip is. This starting position being so far forward can help potentially build a lot of momentum as they go into the rest of their swing. Now the next move here is that they shift their weight more to the back leg as their hands move back. They both do this in a pretty pronounced fashion, and this is very common in big servers. One of the main reasons players do this is so that they can more powerfully shift their weight to the front leg later in the swing. This pronounced move also helps with preventing the weight from shifting on the front leg too early, which is paramount in the serve. So far this early in the serve, I don't really see any noticeable flaw that Oliver is performing. We could make the argument that he's sitting in that back leg position a little bit too long, but at that point we're kind of splitting hairs. Something he can experiment with a little bit, but it may not make a huge difference. Now, one thing we can see here, however, is that look at how far away Oliver's racket is from his head at this point. And if we compare this to Johansson, his racket is not as far away from his head at this point. If the racket gets this far away from your head as you're approaching the trophy position, this can create a more inefficient lasso motion. So I believe this is something that Oliver can adjust if he wants to add a few extra miles per hour here. However, this one point I'm about to bring up is extremely crucial for optimizing your power, and Oliver is definitely leaving some gains on the table here. Now, although Oliver is getting into a very good seesaw position here, where his right shoulder is significantly below the left shoulder, he's loading with his legs very well, look at how far back his head is. His head is significantly closer to his right shoulder than Thomas Johansson's is. And what that does is that it inhibits his forward momentum. So this is a very common trap for players who are trying to increase that seesaw motion, where they're really trying to get that tilt with that right shoulder below the left shoulder, and also for players that are trying to get more of an extreme racket drop and really feel that upward drive towards the ball. And this also alludes to my belief that a lot of coaches overemphasize the loading on the back leg. And although it's extremely important and force plate data has shown that in Mark Kovacs' studies, there's a million ways to do it incorrectly. So is the back leg important in the serve? Yes, definitely, but you don't want it to disrupt your forward momentum, and that's key here. It's the key balance. Now, one thing that's subtle but important as well is look at the direction of where their eyes are facing. Johansson's eyes are more side-on while he's looking at the ball more peripherally, where Oliver is looking directly forward with his head, and also upwards because the ball is above him. The issue with having your eyes face in the direction of the net at this point in the motion is that it'll make you more tempted to want to open up too soon. And this is largely due to the fact that your head is the heaviest part of your body, so wherever the head goes, your body will have a tendency to follow it. Now, here you can see the consequences of the racket being too far away from the head, like I previously described. This is why Oliver's racket drop looks a little bit unorthodox compared to Johansson. You kind of see how the racket is kind of bending inwards. So if Oliver's racket was a little bit closer to his head as he was approaching the trophy position, his racket likely wouldn't have bent inwards this much this late in the motion. Now, although Oliver's leg drive upwards is fantastic, you can see that his legs and feet aren't as into the court as Johansson's are. And this is largely due to the fact that his head was so close to his right shoulder when he was in that earlier position where the shoulders were significantly tilted. You can also see that this limits his torso from snapping into the court relative to his hips as much as Johansson does. So essentially, when his head was so far back in that tilted position, it inhibited his forward momentum and also disrupted the torso from folding into the court as much relative to his lower body. So this also leaked significant power. So in essence, when you're approaching the trophy position or into the trophy position where your left shoulder is significantly higher than your right shoulder, this is totally fine. This is what you want to do, but you don't want to have your center of gravity directed too much in the direction of the back fence. And that's why you want to keep your head closer to the left shoulder at this point. And this is why you don't want to overemphasize back leg loading to the point where it disrupts your forward momentum. I'm looking forward to seeing Oliver serve when he implements these new improvements, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys learned some valuable information, and we'll see you guys soon.